Welcome to Building Energy. I'm your host, Jared Downey. Today, I feel like we have a very fitting show. You notice I've got a scarf around my neck trying to get warm. We've had a bit of a cold snap here in Vancouver, and a snow dump all at the same time. So very interesting, you might say, to watch traffic in Vancouver. But my guest, he laughs at that kind of weather. So because he's out of Alberta, we have Kaizen Safety on. We're going to have one of their partners, Grant Kelly. He's also the director of quality assurance. So it's going to be a safety episode, which is obviously, in energy, mining, construction, all these episodes we do is such a priority, and they've got some unique approaches to it. So it's going to be lots to cover and interesting topics. Before we do that, shout out to all the people that are helping us get all over the world. Savanaugh Equipment and Corporate Traveler. They are sponsoring our Heavy Industry World Tour. We've already been to South Africa, Australia, of course, across Canada. We're going to be hitting events like Con Expo in the US in the coming year. So, if you want to if you're going to a major event and you want to join us, just let us know. We'll put contact information in the video description below. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Let's kick things off. Grant, welcome to the show. Great to have you on.
Hey, Jared. Great to be here. Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Yeah. I was whining about our weather. We're filming this right before Christmas. Obviously, it'll be getting released in probably end of January. So, what kind of weather are you dealing with right now?
Oh, this morning is balmy. It's minus 30 degrees C, the ambient temperature. The wind chill minus, I think, about 1 million. Yeah.
Yeah.
Feels it's brutal. It's really bad. Yeah.
After about 40, it does not. It doesn't make a difference anymore.
No, it doesn't matter. No, you're right.
Do you get a lot of snow? Which area are you in?
I'm just outside Calgary right now, just out in Cochrane.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't have a lot of snow. There's probably a foot or so on the ground. Not horrible, a bit of drifting, but it's the temperature that's really not.
Yeah. I remember my first company, I was having to train. I was training, and an elderly Finnish guy was the owner of the company, and he made me work beside him in a minus, I think it was a minus 40 snow cap, and we were doing siding, so our hands were bare. I was not equipped for that, and he didn't even stop. It was horrible. Different generation, let's put it that way. But the reason I'm not just sort of flippantly bringing up the weather, but I was curious in your business. I know here in Vancouver, that first snowfall, we were talking about it before we came on, is just a disaster from a safety standpoint in just residential areas. Do things get busy for you come winter? Is that a big part of what you're doing? Is these operations within these types of weather snaps and things like that?
That's funny, and that's an interesting question. The weather doesn't really affect us, and a lot of the work that we do prefers cold weather, believe it or not. There's a lot of areas that are inaccessible, because of muskeg or just the type of ground that's in there, and forest areas and rivers and lakes. Whereas in the winter, when it's this cold, now and by we I mean the industry, whether it's an oil rig, a pipeline installation, it's more easily and safely accessible. So the cold weather, it's rare for the cold to shut anything down here. On a lot of them, they bring in boilers, steam units, steam heaters, and it's got to be awful cold before we actually have to shut down. When we're concerned about hydraulic lines blowing up or just metal fatigue from the cold. But other than that, no. From an operations perspective, no, we're okay with it. Our bodies, but we're okay.
Right, but it actually smooths out the systems implementing things. With the
exactly right. There's things we can do in the winter that we can't do in the summer, and the spring, we call it spring breakup, when things start to melt.
Right.
We're actually pretty much shut down everywhere, in everything in oil and gas for sure. So the winter is good for us. We're fine.
This episode is brought to you by M&P and their Question of the Week segment. This week, we're going to feature James Dyack. He is the Partner of Valuation and Litigation Support at M&P. and he'll be answering how valuations are impacted in the current energy environment.
Well, we know that oil and gas prices are high right now. They're higher than they've been for the last few years. They've come down in the last 6 months, but they're still high. This impacts the valuation of oil and gas reserves. The buyers of oil and gas reserves often rely on reserve reports. And those reserve reports, if they're not updated for current pricing, they could be dated and could be undervaluing the asset. For example, price curves back in January 2021 for long-term WTI was about $59. Today, it forecasts $73. So that has a huge impact on the price curve within the reserve report. But the other cash flows in the reserve report will also be impacted. For example, capital expenditures and operating expenditures. There's been a huge run-up of inflation in the last 6 months, or last year for that matter, and they will also have an impact. So taking all of these into consideration will be important as you value your oil and gas reserves. For services companies, really need to understand where you also are in the cycle. A lot of companies doing extremely well. For example, tubulars companies, those that can keep inventory on the shelves are doing very well. Pipe bending companies don't have any more capacity. We're finding environmental companies can't find enough cementing companies to help them with remediation and reclamation. So that tells me that cementing companies are doing very well. It seems to be across the board. So if you are a buyer of an oilfield services company, think about where you are in the cycle. Think about how the cycle is impacted by the price of oil and gas, and consider rolling out a discounted cash flow model that will take into consideration that this might not last forever. Those types of things will help you in making sure that you're not overpaying for this type of a company. We're also seeing a lot of litigation right now. When companies have more money, like they do now in the high oil and gas price environment, they tend to litigate more. We're seeing a lot more minority shareholder disputes and buyouts of minority shareholders. In these situations, you need to understand that the unanimous shareholders agreement allows for a minority discount. This can have a major impact on the valuation of a buyout in this currently high energy environment.
Cutsforth's commitment to innovating technologies for the power industry has been the biggest driver in developing their innovative and unique offerings. Their patented easy change brush holder design, shaft grounding, and monitoring systems have been installed across the globe. Ever evolving, they recently expanded their offerings through the acquisitions of Insight CM, an online asset monitoring platform, and WSC Consulting Services. They are continuously supporting the power industry through the power of innovation. Visit cutsforth.com to learn more about their products and services. That's cutsforth.com, and you can also watch out for Cutsforth's upcoming 3-part series. OptiSeis is a leading-edge geophysical acquisition design and software company. OptiSeis provides innovative seismic survey designs utilizing the latest field technology and optimizing for advanced processing and quantitative interpretation techniques. OptiSeis' mission is to bring sustainable exploration solutions to energy development with their custom land footprint reduction technology, EcoSeis. EcoSeis enables operators to focus on reducing their environmental and greenhouse gas footprint while imaging all their subsurface targets and reducing costs. You can visit them at optiseis.com to learn more.
Where did the name Kaizen come from? It's an interesting word.
It's a word I've been using for years because I've been doing a lot of work internationally for a long, long time. And it's a word that I learned, probably 15 years ago. And it's a Japanese word. And it means, the rough translation means continuous improvement. Now, there are companies like Toyota, for example, who've adopted the full philosophy of Kaizen. And it is very involved, very detailed, and I embrace it. So anyway, I've been using the word, and then my two partners and I, when we decided we were going to start a new company for all lots of good reasons, what are we going to name it? Well, we can call it Grant, Phil, and Mark, or we can call it Safety This or Safety That.
Yeah.
And my partner said, Grant, you're forever using this word Kaizen, and you're always about wanting to improve everything. So name it Kaizen, and it was Phil. And so what an idea. So it was unanimous, like right then, right there, Kaizen it is. Yeah.
Right.
And so the word safety is in there, and we have we're not big enough to have divisions. That'd be a little pretentious, but we knew that we would have, just the way we're structured, we would have other companies involved with us in one form or another, and I'm going to use the word division just for fun. So let's call it a group. So there it was Kaizen Safety Group, and then we went with incorporated. So KSGI, that's who we are, Kaizen Safety Grouping. Yeah.
Does that, and have you, as the company has developed, have you really, actually, let's get more specific. How have you develop that continuous improvement methodology into the company. Let's go from like the first year. What was sort of that main focus of having? What did you need to implement right off that first year when you and your two partners started the company?
Well, it was on two levels, and the answer to your question. This can take quite a while if I let it go.
I've got time. I've got time. I'm stuck in the winter here, so.
Well, we wanted to have really, really good equipment that we put an awful lot of thought in. Now, equipment is relatively easy. All that takes is money. You can go out and you can buy all the breathing air equipment, the gas detection equipment, the vehicles, the trailers. All that takes is money. So okay, fine. The other, so it's the equipment. How can we make it better? And
So,
I'll come back to
Grant,
that.
I'm just gonna ask a quick question. Is the equipment sort of universally accepted as the best equipment? Like is it kind of clearly known if you're trying to get a contract with a company, you've got this equipment, this sort of industry standard? Is that how it works in safety?
There is a general standard. For example, one of our mainstays, our bread and butter, is what we call our respiratory protection unit. It's a fancy word for our breathing air trailers. And these trailers carry compressed, filtered, breathable air for workers who are going into atmospheres that are oxygen deficient and or toxic and or a number of other things. So we supply the air and the lines and all of that. Now, there are a few different manufacturers and they're all high end. There's no junk out there. There really isn't. So we chose, like there's a particular brand. I've been doing this since I started in this industry in 1976. And some of the equipment or the manufacturers that I used back then are still in business, still doing really, really well. For example, I'm going to spout a name here.
Sure.
Scott breathing apparatus. There's others, MSA, Draeger. They're all just as good. I'm not knocking any of them. The New York City Fire Department. Tens of thousands of breathing apparatus. It's all Scott. We used Scott way back in the day. It's gone through a number of different evolutions, iterations, and so we still use Scott, and it's industry recognized as one of the really good ones. And like I mentioned, some other names, they're also good. So we have that. All our regulators, all our hardware, it's all industry recognized. There are other safety companies that we work alongside, competition. They're all excellent companies, great equipment, great people. And so the industry recognizes that, that's fine. You've got an air trailer. You've gone through all the proper certifications with your air, with the style of equipment, your testing, your inspections. We all do it, and that's great. I pulled my first air trailer. I'll stick with that one because it is kind of a bread and butter thing. I pulled my first air trailer back in, I can't remember, it was 1979 or 1980. So a lot of years. I haven't done it for a long, long time, but I know what works and what doesn't work. And we have colleagues, men and women who are almost as old as I am, and same thing. So before we built our first air trailer, okay, guys, ladies, let's sit down. How can we make it even better? Let's apply some Kaizen to this, shall we? So what we did, and I'll give you a couple of examples. We just recently, four of our newest units, we were up to 10 units now, and four of our newest are just rolling off the assembly line. And one of my partners and I just picked it up from the deckling shop a couple of days ago, and it's just getting its plumbing finished. So we're so thrilled with these. And we've got, and just as an example, what we do is we have external panels, and we ran, partly for redundancy, but partly for efficiency, we run dual panels, so one on either side of the unit. So when you want to, all your pressure gauges and your control valves are run from outside in a central location, but two separate ones. And so the cylinders inside, we carry a lot of air, and we measure our air in terms of how many man hours, how many person hours do you have on board. And so our newest ones have 60 man hours, person hours on board. And so typically we can do a job, and by a job I mean, I'll give an example, a confined space entry. So we're working in a refinery, a gas plant, where workers have to enter a a vessel. Now, the vessel may be low in oxygen, it may have some toxic or the potential for some toxic gases. Typically, they're purged, but they have to go in there wearing a breathing apparatus. So they wear a supplied air breathing apparatus with hoses connected to our trailers. And so we supply the air, we supply all the protocols, which involve the emergency response planning, all the certifications for the people, for the equipment. Confined space entry is a very, very dangerous situation. There's a lot to it, but I'll just stick with the air trailer for now. So they go in there, and we're running off of one control panel, which was typical in the day, where that's the way it always worked. So what we've done is we've added a second control panel on the opposite side. They're all tied together, so now we have a full panel redundancy. So that's a good thing. So there's an improvement right there. Here's another thing we came up with. Hey, we've got 12 cylinders, high pressure, 4,500 PSI cylinders inside that unit. What if we split them? What if we had the capability to isolate so we can have 6 cylinders running one panel, the other 6 cylinders completely isolated, running the other panel? Now you've got 2 big vessels close beside each other, which happens regularly in big gas plants where we enjoy working. We can actually do 2 jobs simultaneously from the one unit. Wow, okay, now there's another improvement.
Right.
So what we took the old standard that many of us have been doing for years and years and years, and we've added the redundancy. Fantastic. Now we can isolate and we can actually run dual. Wow. So there's just one example of what we do for continuous improvement.
E3 Lithium is a lithium resource and technology company aiming to power the growing electrical revolution. Based in Alberta, E3 Lithium's combined resources, including the Clearwater project, are being developed on the backbone of the mature and sophisticated oil and gas industry that will allow the company to accelerate its development. Visit them at e3lithium.ca to learn more. With more than 100 boilers in the rental fleet, Nationwide Boiler is more than a world-class rental boiler company. In addition to supplying reliable rental boiler equipment, Nationwide is also a manufacturer's representative and stocking distributor, offering new and refurbished boilers for sale. An expert in the field of ultra-low NOx emissions for boilers and fired equipment, and a design and build UL-certified factory for custom control systems. Visit nationwideboiler.com or give them a call today at 1-800-227-1966 to learn more. PowerZone carries a massive inventory of pumps, engines, generators, and compressors. However, they don't stop there. They combine imagination with world-class engineering. They detail the entire process to every customer. Their pump package testing facility ensures your equipment is landing on-site, ready to work. That is PowerZone. Start with inventory, develop with imagination, deliver with integrity, and it's all at powerzone.com. That is PowerZone.
Going back to that, and I think it ended up being a good interruption. So was that continue? So you said the equipment was sort of the first step, and then there was a second part. So how does that now tie into the second part? With it again going into that beginning, those key things you had to implement to getting going.
Yeah, so we've got the equipment, and there's a lot of other men and women with other safety companies who are just as smarter than I am, and they're going to come up with some of this stuff, maybe even better. So, and again, equipment, all it takes is money. Now, I talked about we would put that trailer out there and we would hook up 2 systems. Well, it takes people to hook them up. Now, here's the key. I'm going to use a term, our secret sauce. So, a lot of companies say our people are our greatest asset. Sure they are. Yeah. Okay, prove it. So what we're doing, and I'm hoping to talk about this a little bit later as we talk here, Jared. We have a very robust, very, very strong service that we provide, and it's called leadership and safety culture. And so how about building a culture within Kaizen Safety Group? How about the leadership skills? And I'll go into a lot more detail later, but how about the people who are operating this equipment? So we want to have not just, we call them hard hat holders or the warm body syndrome. I mean, And especially in this day and age, it's hard to find people. So we've got a lot of people who are part of our work family, and we teach them communication skills, emotional intelligence, psychological safety, personality diversity, conflict resolution, and it goes on and on and on with quite an array. And so the people who are running our equipment, they know how to deal with clients. They know how to deal with workers. A worker gets into a stressful situation, and we're not there just supplying the air and supplying the equipment. We can actually have a conversation with them, listen to them, see how can we help them. If they're having problem with the equipment, with their paperwork, or just how they're getting along with each other, we can help them. And we're so proud of our people. So that's the two parts, Jared, is we want to improve the people, improve our equipment, improve our culture, improve our leadership capabilities within our own organization as well as externally. So those are the two main areas. How do we improve the equipment? How do we improve the people? And this is what we're working towards. We've had a lot of successes, and we're gearing up for an awful lot more.
Because you've been in the industry quite a while, in let's say 95, were those courses, were safety companies putting their people through those courses? Is that relatively new? And I'm asking, I really don't know the answer to this. How long is that, the type of training that you're talking about, like conflict resolution or communication skills, like, is that fairly new, or has it been around and you just sort of evolved it?
It's probably been around at one form or another in general. And like you said, I've been in the industry for 46 years, so I could tell you more stories from back in the day that'd curl your toes. But people never talked about emotions, ever. That wasn't there. Come on. If you're a real man, you'll just put up with it and you don't whine about anything. And so I started observing, it was probably in the 90s when I started observing. I'm just going to tell you a little story here now. So I started watching people and the way they treated each other and the way they treated themselves. And, it's a tough world out there. It still is. I mean, a morning like this, it's minus 30 with a wind chill of minus a million. And those guys are still out there and they're still working in this, and God bless them. They're hardworking people, and I love them. I'm proud to be part of this industry. So back in the day, we would be out, and I'll use a drill rig as an example. So I'd be assigned to go to some drill rig in the middle of nowhere, hours and hours away from my home, my family, and we're living in a camp. The camp was fine with the food and the sleeping. That was all good. Out on the rig, it was cold, it was dirty, it was noisy, and you're dealing with tough men, and it was primarily men in those days, and they were tough. The things that they could put up with, we all had to protect ourselves emotionally. You would never say my emotions, never say it, but subconsciously it was our emotions that we were trying to protect. So what we did is we had to show people that you can't hurt me. Right. Emotionally, you can't hurt me. I'm going to prove it. I'm going to be as rough and filthy and foul and all the negative things you can imagine. I'm going to be that so I fit in. And if I show how rough I am, that proves how tough I am. So what would happen is we as an industry, we would equate rough with tough. And there's some of us, and I'm going to hold myself up as an example. I think I'm every bit as tough, and I've been 46 years doing this, and I'm still surviving. I don't think I ever got rough. And there were several of my colleagues who never got rough. And I thought, what's the difference? So there's a thing called psychological safety, emotional safety, the human part of it. So this is when I started to evolve in my own little brain. How can we start teaching, at least start talking about and teaching a lot of our people in whether it's oil and gas, mining, forestry, construction, doesn't matter. How can we be tough without being rough? So we really know how to talk to each other, more importantly, listen to each other. So I started in 2004, I started doing international work. And so I worked overseas for a long, long time. I've been back in Canada for only a couple of years. And I was able to, with the company I was working with, I was in Malaysia, and I saw similar things there. And I said, you know what? I'm going to put my money where my mouth is.
Similar to the as in a similar culture of the rough and tough in Malaysia?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not quite the same. Malaysians, I love working with those guys, and they're different, but still the same. You get the same thing. Human beings are human beings. And I've worked in Iraq. I've worked in India, Bangladesh, the Middle East for a long
I mean,
time.
they're tough jobs. So you're starting off with a tougher type of person, or a person that needs a certain amount of money to sort of feed their family. It's attracting a
Yeah.
certain type of people to that type of work, just
Yeah.
automatically. Yeah. Sorry, Grant. So you said that you're like in Malaysia, was the culture similar, sort of that sort of tougher, a tougher group working these jobs and that sort of thing? Was it similar to the Canadian? Is that what you meant?
There were a lot of similarities. Yeah, that's for sure. And what I was seeing there, the same as I saw here, we see lots of bosses, lots of supervisors, lots of managers, not an awful lot of leaders. And so the word leadership, which has become a buzzword lately, everybody's got leadership. Oh, I took leadership when I was in Cub Scouts. Okay, yeah, and I'm sure you did, and I'm not knocking that. So what we're doing is I started to recognize, you know what, let's take the leadership skills of a lot of brilliant people and let's marry them to our industry, to industry in general, anything where you got hardworking men and women. And so this is what we started to, now culture has become a buzzword. Leadership has become a buzzword. So within Kaizen, and I started this in 2010, it was about 2010, let's build a leadership for safety culture, if we could do that. And I can go into lots more detail on that later. So now people are talking about it, but also doing about it. Now there are some excellent leadership programs available. They're different than my approach. I mean, I have a unique approach, Kaizen does, and that's fine. And what a culture can look like and how we can evolve your current culture. So yeah, now we as an industry, we're not afraid to talk about emotions. We're not afraid to talk about communication skills. We're not afraid to talk about fancy words like empathy. My goodness, not that long ago, you would never use a word like empathy in this industry.
Mm-hmm.
Now we talk about it. And I've got students, if you will, clients who these become my students, rough and tough guys, ladies, who are salt of the earth, fantastic people. I love them to death. And now they're actually using things like emotional intelligence, empathy, psychological safety. Wow, this is fantastic, and we're growing more and more and more all the time. So this is what we're doing within Kaizen. It's a product, it's a service. We've got a couple of really good clients that we're working with currently, or at least have been working with this past year. And so the industry is starting to say, yeah, this is what we want.
I really have I'm really curious about this, and I've kind of been waiting for a show that I could ask this question, with an audience listening and not, in private. I hear what you're saying, and it is important. But again, I grew up around a lot of the same people. So I mean, we probably know we're probably one person removed from a lot of the people that we we know. Some of these, and I'll say guys specifically because those are the people I'm picturing in my head right now. Some of these guys, they are legitimately tough guys. Like they are, they're tough. They're tough men, and it probably has been developed, but they're genuinely rough guys. And I don't mean rough in the sense of like, the vulgarity type stuff. I mean, they think rough. They could take a beating and they could give one. And those guys, you see them in like a safety meeting and you can see they're just waiting for it to be done. It's just not their thing. Are you able to get through to those guys? And I'd say not just follow the rules, not just do what it takes to keep their job, but that they can actually adopt these things without for them feeling like being a sellout of who they are. I know it's a bit of a tricky question, but I think it sounds an important one because these guys are a lot of times also the top performers in these companies.
Yeah, it's a very valid question. I get asked this quite often. And even with my coaches, because we have a group of men and women that help me with this, and I'm teaching them to be field coaches to work with some of the folks you just mentioned. Anyway, let me go back. We bring them into not in large groups. I won't take more than 16 at a time,
Okay.
because I don't deliver a program. I facilitate a program. It's all about getting the buy-in and getting their feedback, and they participate. It isn't a lecture, not at all. It's not a lecture. This is getting them involved. We bring them into a classroom, and we'll have a maximum of 16. 12 is my favorite. And more often than not, most of them have their arms folded. You're looking at body language.
So it's common. You out of 12, will you have 9 like that, or 6, or what would you, if you on an average, if you were to guess?
Every single one of them. Okay, of the 12 that come in, I'll have 2 that are open and ready to learn. I'll have 2 that are absolutely against this. They think this is just garbage or never want anything to do with it. And where are we? So then the other 8 are, all right, let's see what this guy's got. And then they're just, okay, go ahead, prove yourself is what they're saying to me. And there's usually 1 or 2 of my coaches in the group with me, and it's all fine. It usually takes about half an hour, and 10 of them are leaning on their elbows, leaning forward, and tell me more. Within the hour, I've got every single one of them. And I would say 95% of them, they buy it.
Really?
They're a part. And you know what? A lot of it is, I'm just going to say what I feel. A lot of it is because they start looking and say, you know what? That old guy knows what he's talking about. This makes sense. He's been in the mud. He's been in the cold.
I was going to say, and you're not a guy coming. You're not me with a scarf wrapped around my neck coming from Vancouver complaining about -8. You've lived it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so the scarf just came from Vancouver or just university, and I'm good at this. And these men and women are brilliant at this. The university, and I'm not knocking university. I think it's everybody get your education, but when they stand up in front of a group of these men that you just described, they don't last very long, because people can see, yeah, you learned this from a book. You've never been there. You don't know what it's like to be
you've never grabbed a wrench with bare hands in -40. It never happened.
Yeah. Or plus 45.
Or plus 45, yeah, the other one. Yeah.
Yeah, so it doesn't take long, and they realize, you know what, Kaizen, these guys know what they're talking about.
Right.
My coaches, for the most part, are older men and women who've been there as well. So
right.
we get them. And I would say, as we work through programs, because we do the classroom portion, which is quite a number of hours, and we go through all the theory of all the topics that I've mentioned, plus an awful lot more. Then we go to the field, and we work alongside them for a half an hour a day, whatever it is. So we observe them doing their different jobs, whether it's a tailgate meeting, whether it's what we call a corrective feedback. Somebody's made a mistake, done some damage, and they got to deal with them. Okay, how do you do that so you don't beat them up, but you still get a positive result out of it? So what we do is coach them. So it's all coaching, and that's just another big part of what our program is all about. So the classroom, and then the coaching, and I would say, and when we finish a program, probably about 75%, they're not there yet. They're not fully competent, and they haven't really aced it, but they're buying it. They're taking part. They're trying. They're making an effort. We've got something there. That's probably 75. 20% are, yeah, I'll try it. And maybe 5% are totally pushing back. And, talking to other professionals in a similar industry, a very close friend of mine did this with RCMP for quite a number of years instead of punitive justice, it's restorative justice. So anyway, a lot of this came, and he said, Grant, if you've got a record, he said that's astoundingly high. It really is. So 75% of these people that you just described, they buy it. And we're out leaning up against the blade of a bulldozer in terrible conditions. And I'm looking at one of these guys, who's probably in his 50s or 60s, and he's using words like emotional intelligence and empathy in conversation. you've made
Yeah.
a difference. You've been able to help them.
Grant, there's a lot of other things I want, like some of the sort of the next steps for the company, sort of the partners that you've got working with, things like that I want to cover. But I wanted to make sure that we kind of let the audience know and just spend a couple minutes. What is the list of services that Kaizen is delivering? If someone actually needs to phone you and say, "Hey, we need this," what are you providing to the customers?
Okay. Well, I think we already talked enough about the breathing air and the leadership and safety culture. As part of the breathing air, we also have gas detection, and we have everything from a single gas little clip-on monitor to measure H2S levels, hydrogen sulfide levels. We also have the quad head monitors that read 4 different gases, toxics, and oxygen.
So you're selling these products then?
What we do is we rent them. We can sell them.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, typically we'll go on a project that's going to last anywhere from a week to a month to 6 months,
Got
and
it.
we'll supply these gas detection. We also have much bigger units where we put out, instead of as a personal unit, these are stationary units. So we're monitoring for gas levels, oxygen levels, whatever gas we programmed into it, and we're monitoring it remotely. So the gas detection is a big deal. We also have 2 different types of rescue. One we call high angle rescue. Anytime the folks are working more than about 12 feet off the ground and something terrible happened and they had to be brought down from that height, well, you can't just sling them over your shoulder and climb down a ladder. So that's a bit more specialized with ropes and pulleys, and some call it rope rescue. And we've got specialists on our team, part of our work family, who are brilliant at how do you get an injured person from 50 feet in the air down to the ground safely so that they can go to medical aid. So the high angle rescue is another big part of what we do.
So it's a training, that's a service being delivered, or a training to do it?
Both.
Both. Okay.
It's a service we absolutely provide. We have all the equipment and the personnel, and we've got a couple of people, a man and a woman, one guy in particular, James Arthur is his name. James is an instructor and very, very high-end certified instructor. So we do our in-house training, and we also offer it as a training service to clients when they want it, when they need it. So the high angle is a big deal. There's another one that's becoming more and more popular. We call it slope rescue. This is done more on pipeline. So there's a lot of big pipeline that's being installed right now, and we've been working with a couple of the pipeline companies, and with Solaris Murphy, also with Michaels Canada, with pipeline work. A lot of it with leadership and with some equipment. Now, when they are doing some of their pipeline installations, it's on very, very steep slopes. Unbelievable. Some of it you can barely walk up and down, and they've got to get equipment up and down it. Terrible mountain roads. Well, in emergency response planning, you've always got to prepare for the worst. So what if a piece of equipment, a pickup truck with some workers in it, goes over a steep bank? Now we've got to get down to the people, extricate the casualties, and get them back up on the road in baskets, properly secured to medical. So that service, we call it slope rescue. Right now we have 2 what we call slope rescue trucks, and 1 ton, 4-wheel drive, winches, lights, extrication gear, all kinds of rope rescue. I'm not a technician, so I can't speak in great detail to that equipment, but we spent a lot of money on it, and our experts like James Arthur selects the equipment. It's lightweight, heavy duty rope rescue for steep slopes, especially when vehicles are involved. So there's high angle, there's slope rescue. We are also very involved in the people. For example, we call them HSE, Health, Safety, and Environment, safety advisors. And these are men and women who've been in the industry a long, long time. And that's what I did in Malaysia for 7 years. I was an HSE advisor, which means that when it comes to pre-planning, emergency response planning, when it comes to risk assessments, quantitative risk assessments, which are very detailed, complex, we have a lot of people who can run the whole program, help with building the program. And so we do have a lot of incidents or incidents.
It's not
Yeah.
bad. That's the first stumble in the full interview. Most people don't get that far, so good job.
Yeah. So there's a lot of occasions where we can help clients, and we do go out there and we'll spend anywhere from a week to several months working, whether it's on a drilling operation, a completions operation. We've done a number in gas plants where we put in advisors, and so we review a lot of the work that they've done with a critical eye, so that we're very up on current legislation, whether it's Alberta or British Columbia, which is our two main areas for the moment. So we'll make sure that we've got legislation covered, we've got their own policies, procedures, their own management system is adequately covered, plus our years and years and years of experience. That's because all of these rules, regulations, yes, full compliance, but my favorite term is we have to apply a high degree of reasonableness. Sometimes you have to compensate a little bit because of the conditions, the people that you're working with. So yeah, a high degree of reasonableness with all of this.
That's a huge, and that's another thing is what going back to, someone who's not experienced in the industry who can't understand. I mean, I see it, I'll pick on my wife for a while. Like when we're driving and it's in this kind of weather, she won't understand why I'm doing something a lot of times because she has never driven in this type of weather. So for her, it seems like I'm doing something wrong, but it is the safest thing that could possibly, so that we don't end up in a 3-car pileup behind me, So those types of things, that's a real part of the industry too, is being able to go in there and say, no, I get why you're saying we can't do this, that it's actually more dangerous, even if on paper it's how it's supposed to be done.
Yeah, exactly right, Jared. Yeah, and that's a good example. A lot of the things that you're doing that your wife is going to question is probably not documented anywhere. You just know it. And so this is where we come in as well. And there's things, and I'm not brilliant, and there's lots of men and women out there who can do things way better. But I have been doing it for 46 years, so I kind of got a pretty good handle. And a lot of my colleagues also, I mean, they're up in the 30 years, 35 years. My two business partners each have 20. They're quite a bit younger. So you take that experience and apply that to the legislation, to the codes of practice, policies and procedures, and now you've got a very robust risk assessment, really good control measures put in place. So you've mitigated this stuff down to, you know what, this is actually safe. This is going to work. I'll be darned.
It's safe and it's productive and it can integrate in with all these personalities that are on these jobs. I wanted to circle back to, you mentioned at the beginning about your business partners, which is I will never forget sitting I was part of this sort of leadership sort of like meet once a week type thing and stuff. And there was some really interesting discussions in it. And I did learn some stuff from it. But I remember very distinctly someone saying, never get a business partner. And I just, they'd had a very bad experience, So I get where they were coming from. And, myself and my business partner, we've been at it for, almost 8 years now. I mean, it would just have been impossible without a business partner to do the company that we built. I guess just to start off talking about them, what has that experience been like? 3 business partners, that's a few voices in a room. That's not just one business partner. That's 3 different people with maybe 3 different ideas and 3 different visions. Can we go back to the beginning? How did that relationship start? And did it evolve to what you expected it to, or how did it sort of shape up over the years?
Okay, That's great. Well, okay, there are two business partners. So one, I'll start with Phil McGow, a business partner, a good friend. Phil's father and I go way back, and he's a brilliant man, Barry McGow. Lots in the industry know him, remember him. And this is his son, Phil. Phil and I worked together. I was always quite a bit older, so I've done different things in different positions. And Phil worked his way through the system in the safety industry, most definitely. Phil is a brilliant marketing and business development, which
Great
is
at communicating. Great at communicating. I've talked to Phil quite a bit, and he is just right down the line. We were talking to him. You know where you're headed. It's anyway. Sorry to interrupt you, but I just he's
Okay.
just very good at that communication side.
Phil is a salesman. You can, good or bad, you can call it whatever. He is a salesman. He knows how to talk. He knows how to put together a proposal, and he does that. I couldn't do that at all. Not a chance can I do what he does. He is a sales guy. Technical, yeah. Run a business, yeah. He's okay. He's fine. But he is sales through and through. Mark Brown, my other really good friend and business partner, he is a businessman. Now, he's been in the industry 20 years, in the safety industry. He's worked his way up to very high positions. He was the president of a very reputable company for quite some time. He is business. He knows how to stretch a dollar, squeeze a dollar, watch accounts payable, watch accounts receivable. He is fantastic. And I've known Mark. We started actually working together in 2004. And funny, at the time, he reported to me. I was a station manager. He came in and he was my dispatcher. It took me about a day and a half to say, Mr. Brown, you are going to be the next station manager because I've got other things I want to do. And sure enough, it didn't take very long, and he was. Mark is brilliant. He can take a balance sheet and he can read it, understand it. Brilliant strategist when it comes to business. So we've got the Phil's strength in sales, Mark's strength in business. I'm not really much of a salesman. Yeah, I'm okay, but not great. And same as business. I've been an independent contractor incorporated for a number of years, and I've always done okay. I've done fine. Nothing like Mark Brown can do. And so I've always been the technical guy with the equipment and the people and actually executing
And you enjoy that part of it as well.
Well, love it. So it wasn't a difficult conversation when the three of us started talking, and we recognized to this day, Grant's the technical guy and the people guy. Phil is the sales guy dealing with clients. Mark is the business guy. He can keep us on track. He can keep all the bookkeeping, the legal, he can keep all that working. And you know what? If we we overlap, we share hats quite often. But if that becomes our areas of responsibility, and recognize and celebrate that we each have our strengths and let each other go, and it's working. So we're 2.5 years into this, and it's working better and better. Has it had hiccups? Oh yeah, of course it's had hiccups. And we've butted heads a couple of times, but we're all mature, we're professionals. Okay, so you can butt heads today. But if you know how to do conflict resolution and how to use all of these fancy leadership skills that we promote, and we do,
yeah, that's true. Yeah, you better, Bill.
Yeah, it's easy to talk the talk, but are we actually doing it? So we're walking the walk, and it's a learning experience. We didn't get it right away, and so the three of us are. I'm not going to say settled in because we're still Kaizen. At my age, I still want to be a little bit better today than I was yesterday. Mark and Phil are the same way. How do we improve our people? How do we improve ourselves? How do we improve our equipment, the service to our client? So it's continuous growth, and it will be for as long as the three of us are involved in this. So that's how the partnership came together, and I'm very proud to be associated with Mark Brown and Phil McGow.
Had you tried other partnerships before? And the reason I'm asking this is because that distinct role, I quite often say that is the key. It is the absolute key to a good partnership is someone has to, I mean, that's in life, a life partner or in business. I think if you don't know what you're bringing to the table and what the other person and what your responsibilities are, then it gets all mushed together and you're going, well, why aren't you doing this? Well, I'm not supposed to do that. And now that creates that conflict and sort of that tension
Mm.
between you. So going back to the question, have you tried it before where maybe the person was, have you been in a partnership where the person was too much of an overlap of yourself? And now
Yeah.
how does it work with this very distinct sort of, even though you all have industry experience, but there's this distinct role that you're bringing?
Yeah. The short answer is no, I have not.
That's good.
Why? Because I listened to what you just said, and I listened to the people who are older and wiser than I am. Excuse me. And be careful with partnerships. So I was always an employee of companies, great companies, and I learned and grew and developed. In about, I don't remember the exact year, I think it was in 2010, I incorporated myself just as an individual, and worked as an independent contractor. I do work well alone. I'm a team player, but I'm also very, very independent. And so I always went on my own. I absolutely did. So to partner with Mark and Phil, this is the first time I've done
So
that.
that's probably
So
a
I
bit of
think,
a learning experience then.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, and again, we've had hiccups, of course we have, but we've gotten over them and learned from them. So we are applying Kaizen. We're improving and growing, and so I'm very happy with the partnership that we have and the three major skill sets that each of us have. And again, recognize them and celebrate them. Here we go.
For you, over the years, what is I always try to ask something a little bit different to everybody, and so it's not the same thing. What inspires you? How do you show leadership? I try to avoid those. What is an accomplishment, a development, a self-improvement that you've tackled that you didn't naturally have? So it was actually maybe even a weakness when you were at some age, let's say 30. What is something you've tackled that now you have in that tool belt, that you're quite proud of?
It would be the leadership skills that I have started, that I really got serious about in 2010. I've been nurturing those for many years. I think I mentioned back in the mid 90s, maybe even previous to that, I started observing people, and I've been kind of been a student of humanity ever since, and watching and realizing or questioning, why do people do the things they do, wear the clothes they wear, drive the vehicles, what's that all about? And then when I became really serious about all of this and developing the Kaizen leadership and safety culture program, I'm so proud of it. We all are. And of course, practice what you preach. So I have learned so much about my own personality, about my own emotional intelligence. How do I manage and control and deal with the emotions that are going on inside this guy? How do I deal with other people's emotions? And whether I like them, don't like them, agree, disagree, doesn't matter. It's not about me. That's their emotions. So there's a process called validation. Then empathy all comes into that. So I am learning and growing myself personally from all the things that I've learned from some fantastic people. And I'll just digress a little bit here. Pretty much all of our leadership program is information that I have gleaned and gathered and learned from people like Simon Sinek, Amy Edmondson, Ken Blanchard, the presentation skills of Steve Jobs. I mean, these are all brilliant men and women, and my list goes on and on. And so what I've done is I've taken a lot of their teachings and their philosophies and thought, how do I marry that all together into our industry and make this applicable to a pipeline foreman, to a drill rig, to a driller, to a rig manager, to a mining superintendent, running big equipment and excavators. How do I take all of these other people's teachings and put it together into a program that's going to be applicable to these folks? And so this is what we've been able to do, and it works. It absolutely works. I give credit where credit is. Those folks came up with the deep stuff. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Oh my goodness. But does that apply? You're darn right it applies. And I won't bore you now with how it applies, but
that could be a whole. It's a good topic, though. It's a great whole other episode. One question I wanted to ask before we wrap up here is: does that having those partners now, though, has that allowed you to develop these skills? Because now you've got a guy like Phil taking care of that sales side. You're not having to sit there and, I mean, Phil, he did a lot of the work booking this episode. Does that allow you to really develop these things that are important to you?
Absolutely, yes. Our leadership and safety culture program, as excellent as it is, it's structured. It's beautifully structured inside here. Not if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, the program is in jeopardy.
Yeah.
So my partners and I said, you know what? We've got to make it a little bit more structured, a lot more structured, a lot more formal, if you will. It needs to be available online. Needs to be more apps, which is, of course, that was never a thing for me. But now we have to have an app, how you can go under and you can scroll through and look up all the different handouts, the different points, refer back to videos of this old guy explaining something. So now what my partners have said, Grant, stop pulling a trailer to Grand Prairie to help with a job.
Right.
Let somebody else do that. Mark will do that, or Phil will do that. And I'm spending time now actually structuring our leadership program. So for the next month or so, I'm going to take what's already a really good program and make it even better in terms of structure and deliverability and accessibility. So the answer to your question is yes. We're able to budget my time so I can spend more time doing what we want this program to look like.
Yeah. And then from a business development point, that allows then the company to start to scale up as those programs become more refined and sort of duplicatable. Is that the right word? Duplicatable.
Yeah, that's a great, exactly, because this is what Phil says to me, Grant, I need something a little bit more so I can market it.
Yeah.
He said, right now, all the marketing is Grant talking. Well, not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's not efficient. That's not the way to go.
Right.
So this will make life easier for Mark and for Phil, or for Mark and for Phil.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah, very very exciting, and I hope this episode gets you good results so that you will come back, because there is. I really, some of these methodologies and stuff that I know that you have, I know you have them in your head, and I would love to get them on this show. But Grant, thank you for coming on, and a shout out to Phil as well for getting everything coordinated. I know we didn't cover every detail of what we could have, but I think it's going to give the audience a nice sort of scope, and we'll have plenty of links to your services and everything like that. So thank you for coming on the show. I hope you come back.
Well, thank you very much. And on behalf of Phil and Mark and myself, we appreciate this opportunity, and we love sharing everything that we're doing and growing into. So thanks very much, Jared.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, everybody, for watching. We love doing the show, and it's really nice when I get to do episodes like this where I'm watching the clock going, okay, well, I'm out of time. But there's so much more to talk about, and thank you. The reason we get to do so many of these episodes is because you keep watching. So thank you to the audience. Thank you to our sponsors helping us get all over the world, put these episodes up, go to events. It's just absolutely fantastic. And of course, check out Kaizen Safety, great company. We will see you on the next episode of Building Energy.